Hi guys, hope you're doing really well. This is Katie, and today we are gonna start a new topic that is decisions one way, right? So far we have discussed about the comparison operator in which we are comparing the values of the variables, right? In which we are using greater than equal to, less than, and less than equal to. As we are now able to create some live projects, so in the live projects, will not be given the program in which we have to just enter the value from the user and print that value. No, basically we have to do some of the computations as well, so as to make the user more clear about it, right? So that's why we have to use some conditions and allow some computation to be performed on the data which is entered by the user. So basically that is the reason we use the decisions. That is one way. So what is called as decision? Like in English, as we simple say that if you do this, then I will do that, else I will do that, right? Basically, that is the condition. In the similar manner, in Python language also, we basically use if-else condition in order to specify any test expression or any condition, right? So Python is basically English, that as I have already told you earlier. So by giving an example, you will get more clear idea about how I am talking about decisions. That is one way. So it is not only one way we would be talking about, it is basically also one way, multi-way, two-way, how we have to proceed and when which condition, which decision making is applied, I will also be telling that, right? So input and output, first of all, we'll basically see the Python code. Here is the Python code. First is that x is equal to 2. Here I have declared a particular variable that is x, and the 2 is basically given to the variable x. Next, there is a print function, and print function says that it is before 2, right? So in the print function, what I have basically printed, I have printed before 2. So in the output, I am getting before 2, right? Till now it's clear. Next, in the case that is basically known as if x equal to 2, because in the last slide I have already make you clear that equal to is basically a comparison operator which is used to compare the two values of the variables. Now because in the earlier I have already declared that s equal to 2, so now we can actually compare that 2 is equal to 2. Now, because we know that 2 equal to 2, that is absolutely true. So it will basically print is true, and then it will also print still true. Why? Because this particular two statements of the Python code, they are basically indicating that this code is written inside the if block. Here the space is given just because to tell the compiler that this particular code is written inside the if block, right? So because this condition is true, then only we are going inside the if block. Otherwise, we'll be going inside the else block, right? Here I have only specified the if condition. In the next slide, I am going to tell you about if else, so it will be getting a more clear idea about it. So here now it is printing is true, and then it will also print still true because the condition is true. Because the condition is true, it will print is true, and then it will also print still true, right? Then moving outside of the if block, it is basically saying print after 2. Yes, absolutely true, because it is basically we have moved outside of the if block, so it will print after 2. Then moving on to the next line, that is print before 3. So before 3, that will also it will print. So before 3, I have basically given in the output that is before 3, right? Then it is x equal to 3. Now we know that the value of the variable x, that is only 2, and 2 is not at all equal to 3, means the x equal to 3, that condition is false. Now because this condition is false, we are able to say that this condition is not true, so we'll not go inside the if block right now, right? As we have moved earlier, when x was equal to 2, so that condition was true. So it was able to move inside the if block and it was printing is true and still true. But in this case, since we know that x is not at all equal to 3, it means we are not going inside the if block right now. So it will not print is 3 and still true. Then again, moving outside of the if block, in the last line I have printed after 3. So absolutely it will print after 3. Why? Just because we have moved outside the if block. So outside of any block, outside of the if block, outside of the else block, I will discuss later, we are able to print any statement which is written after the code, right? So in the similar manner, we have some other decision making that is called as multi-way, right? In the next slide, as I move so forward, that is basically telling that code indentation. That is basically the nested if example, right? Now, what do you mean by nested if? We have particular languages, as you already know, we have C, we have C++, we have Java. Every particular language has its own way of expressing that this code is written inside that particular code. Like for example, there is a if block and that particular if block is written inside a particular if block. So it has its own way of expressing it. Now I'm going to tell you that how Python expresses its own way of telling that this particular code is written inside this block and this particular code is written inside the other block. So here, let's take an example to get a more clear idea about it. That is input. And in this input, we have a particular variable that is number. And number is equal to float input into the number, right? Because I've already told you that enter the number whenever we are going to use the input function. So it's going to take the value from the user. So input function is going to take the value from the user, means that particular number which the user will enter, and as float I have used the float function. So as you remember type conversion we have discussed earlier, right? So in the type conversion we have discussed that any particular number that can actually be converted to integer or float format using the type conversion. So we are able to say that whenever the particular number, whichever number the user will enter, that will automatically get converted to the float number, means decimal number, because here I have converted it to the float number, right? Now moving on to the next line, if number is greater than 0, like if my which is entered by the user that is greater than 0, then it will be printing positive. Elif is the second way, like it's basically the nested of, like if its condition is true, it will go to that block, otherwise it will go to that block. Else if all the other above blocks they are not true, then last में जो भी else आएगा वो उसके कोड का अंदर चला जाएगा. So that is what I am trying to say, that if number is greater than 0, that will print positive. elif if number is not greater than 0, it will move on to the next condition, and that it will say that if number is equal to 0, like it will check the condition that if that number is equal to 0, then it will print 0, else it will print negative, and at the last line it will automatically print end at the end, right? Now let's take an example, like I have the output, like enter the number that is 8. I have the user to enter the number and the user has entered me the number that is 8. So now, because we know that 8 is greater than 0, right? So first condition is true. Because the first condition is absolutely true, it will basically print me positive. And at the end of the program, because I have written end, so it will basically show me end, right? Now, in the second part, I have basically entered the number that is 0. So first it will check my condition that 0 is greater than 0. No, it's not true. Then it will go to the next condition. That next condition says that elif number is equal to 0, means that 0 equal to 0. That's completely absolutely true, right? So it will basically print me 0. And after some time, it will basically print me end, because else में वो जाएगा ही नहीं, right? Because as soon as it shows that elif condition is true, it will move out of the block and it will basically print me end, right? Now, in the next part, I have basically entered the number that is -8. Now, -8, as you all know, that's a negative number, right? First of all, it will basically check that if the number is greater than 0, no, that condition is false. In the second way, it will basically check that if number is equal to 0, no, number is not equal to 0. That is also false. So in the last case, it will go into the else block and then it will print me negative. And at the end of the program, it will basically print me end, right? I hope it's clear. From the above table, now basically we have two-way with else. Two-way with else. So far we have discussed in the particular last slide, I have already made you clear that if text expression is true, then it will go inside the body of if, and if text expression is false, then it will go inside the body of else, right? So here we can also prepare for some flowcharts so as to get a more clear idea about what I'm trying to say. here is a test expression. That test expression could be any condition, like if this is true, like if A is greater than B, if A equal to B, or anything, right? That test expression mostly uses comparison operator, logical operator, which will be discussed later onwards. Now, if test expression is true, then it will go inside the body of if, and if the test expression is false, then it will go inside the body of else. And after all the particular bodies of else or if gets cleared, it will automatically go at the end of the program, and whatever would be printed after the if or else, that will actually be shown as in the print statement, right? So whatever statement would be executed after the if block or the else block, that will automatically be executed, irrespective of whether if condition was true or if else condition was true. Now, in the similar manner, we have a particular decisions that is multi-way. Now, multi-way decisions are basically, they are having multiple paths, right? So in this case, let's take an example. And first of all, we're explaining the flow charts, and then we'll take an example, right? See, there is a particular test expression of if, and if this test expression, that is the condition, that is true, then it will go inside the body of if. Next, if let's suppose that the particular test expression is not true, and basically when we go to the particular if, then if condition is not true, then it will go to the else, and when it will go to the else, it will use the test expression of elif, right? Elif this. Now, if elif condition would be true, then it will basically go to the body of if, and elif condition, if it would be false, then it will go to the body of else. And after all these, whatever statements would be executed after if, elif, and else, they will automatically be executed according to the program. As I have already told your example. So in the next slide, I am going to explain you the example of if-elif, like what I have shown you in the flowchart, right? So here is the input. Input is basically what? Let's suppose that number is equal to 3.4. There is a particular variable. That particular variable is 3.4, and this 3.4 is basically stored in a variable num. If num is greater than 0, then print positive number, right? Means that if this condition is true, that is 3.4, and this 3.4 is automatically greater than 0. The condition is true, and because the condition is true, it's going to print me positive number. Elif num equal to 0. Now, because first condition is true, the compiler will not move ahead with the second condition. It will not move ahead with the else condition. So automatically we'll get the answer, that is a positive number. Let's suppose that instead of taking 3.4, the number would be 0. So if the number would be 0, the first condition would be false because 0 is not greater than 0. The second condition would be true, 0 equal to 0. So the compiler will print me 0. And if there would be a number that is a negative number like -8 or -5, so that number greater than 0, that will also be false. If number equal to 0, that would also be false. Else में जो print होगी, that is a print negative number that will actually be printed. So here I have given you the examples. So we are going to run our program as we have discussed earlier. That program which is inputting the data from the user, the number from the user, and it is going to check that whether our number is greater than 0, equal to 0, or less than 0, right? So I have here atom for you, right? So now I have a num, that's a variable, and I have basically I have a particular function float. And in this float, I am basically going to write input, that is into the number, right? So it is basically inputting the number from the user, and as soon as the particular number is input from the user, it basically gets converted into float value by the function float. And now I am going to use our if condition, that if the particular number is basically greater than 0, then first of all, I have saved this file. I've saved this file in my C drive, and then I have Python folder, and then I have basically done if.py, right? So now see, if I am talking that as soon as you can see now that if I have entered after if, so the atom already do the indentation for me, right? So it actually already has contained the space for me, because he knows that now whatever I am going to write, that code would be inside the if block, right? So that code inside the if block, that would only be true if the number would be greater than 0. So I would basically be printing that it is a positive number, right? So I will basically print positive, right? In the next line, because I am now writing that if number is not greater than 0, then I'll be using elif number is equal to 0, then print that it is 0, right? And in the next line, I'm going to use our else it would be a negative number. Of course, if it is not a positive number, if it is not 0, then it would print me the negative number. I've saved this file. Now I'm running the code in the command prompt. I'm changing the directory first. That is basically Python. And now I'm going to write if.py. So it is going to enter the number. Now let's suppose that the number is basically entered by the user, that is 8. So it will get automatically converted by the Python to 8.0, right? That's a floating point number. And because as you can see over here, that if number is greater than 0, that number is greater than 0, that is basically 8 is greater than 0. So it might be printing positive for me, right? So it will basically print positive. Perfect. Now I'm going to write if.py, and now I'll basically giving me the number that is minus 3.4, right? Let's check what the Python is doing it for me. As soon as I already know that it should give me the negative, right? So now as you can see that it is giving me negative, right? Perfect. Asana, very easy. Next, in the next line, I am going to add 0. So it should basically be printing 0 according to my code, right? So it is basically printing me 0. Yes, wonderful. Now, if I am talking about the next case, let us suppose that after all this particular code, I am adding end at the end of my Python code. Now, what I am trying to say now, it's basically showing me that irrespective of any path which is chosen by the Python compiler, the end would be printed at the output of every program, right? Whatever number the particular user added, whether it is adding the positive number, whether it is adding 0, whether it is adding the negative number, irrespective of any path chosen by the compiler, the particular end will be printed in all the 3 cases. Now, let's run the program now. If.py, right? Again, I have entered the number 8. So it is basically, as you can see, that it is giving me the end at the end of the program. Now, if I added 0, then also it is giving me end. Now, if I add minus 3.4, then also it is giving me end. It means that irrespective of the path chosen by the Python compiler, it is giving me the end at the output of the program, right? Now, let us suppose that basically I have input the number. See, enter the number is basically given by num equal to float input enter the number. Let us suppose that the user enter the strings instead of a number. Now, what is going to be do now? Let's suppose the user enter high volt. So yes, it's giving me the trace back. Why? Because it says that you cannot convert string to float. Because what I have done over here, I have used type conversion, right? As you have already learned in the previous classes, that I have entered the number using the function input, and that particular number is converted into the float value, right? So when it is converted into the float value, so float value में वही number convert हो सकते हैं which actually contains the string in the numeric format. But if it is containing a string in the alphabetical order, we can't actually convert it into the float value, of course, right? So need the error because here the user has entered high volt. So for this case, we use the try except command, which I am going to teach you in the next lecture. So stay tuned. Bye bye guys. Take care and do revise whatever I have taught